I'm waiting for you to follow up on that, but that just became a really awkward moment.
Super awkward. My bad.
Welcome to the Up and Away podcast, sponsored by Commerce Hero.
Welcome to Commerce Hero Daily, number 31. I am taken to the streets yet again. How's it going, Steve?
It's going well, but how are you doing? I mean, last time that we tried the streets thing, it was a little rough.
It was a little rough. So I don't know exactly why I'm trying it again, but I just am. Last time I was hooting and hollering. I was panting. I was a mess. So I thought, hey, you know what? Let's just do this again.
Yeah, we all want to see you struggle.
I don't give a darn.
That's what makes it for good reality television.
I don't give a darn. Oh, dude, there's a squirrel right there. Check that out. Check out that squirrel. That squirrel.
Losing viewers.
That squirrel scared me. Okay, what are we talking about today, Steve?
What are we talking about? I really want to talk about relationships.
Okay.
That's just been on my mind.
How's your relationship?
My relationships are good, but I was actually concerned about yours. So
good reason.
Specifically work, though. I'm talking about work. I know personal relationships, it's all good, but sometimes work relationships can be a little tricky.
True.
Based on what you were telling me.
Yes. What I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, there was one thing that popped up recently that got me thinking, which was somebody was talking about a job situation and the prospect of kind of leaving a job, and they were just saying that there's kind of a vibe within their company that if you leave the company, you're kind of like disloyal, and the way that they talk about people that have left is kind of like, they're, I don't know if they use the word traitors or not, but that was kind of the vibe.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's probably something a lot of people deal with, and thought it'd be a good topic of discussion.
Yeah, you mean like people feeling like they would be ostracized if they were to leave a company?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, disclaimer, like for me and for you, it's a little bit harder to understand this point of view because we haven't had like a regular job for a little while, and I do think that your work related, there's data on your most people's most important relationships outside of their family are from their work, and so
I mean, between us, I consider you pretty much the most important person in my life, minus my kids.
Yeah.
Oh, and wife. Yeah.
Why?
Well, that's kind of a
close second.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to really think this through.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, so I mean, and I think that's you're like, there was not enough laughing.
I'm waiting for you to follow up on that, but that just became a really awkward moment.
Super awkward. My bad. Yeah, so what was I gonna say? Yeah, so I mean, that's something that I don't, and to be honest, that's kind of a pain point I feel myself personally right now, is wanting to have more, because I've been working kind of solo myself for 5 years now, and I actually want to have more in-person relationships. I think it's important, and I think you have to be proactive about that when you work solo or remote or whatever.
Yeah.
So not all that disclaimer to say that work relationships are super important and not to be taken lightly, and your relationship with your company is something not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, I think that when you get into a company, you are becoming, for the most part, a good work environment is going to make you feel like part of a family.
Right.
And so anytime that someone from that family just ups and leaves, if it was not like an amicable, departure, it's going to always feel like maybe a little bit of a sense of betrayal or not necessarily, I'm not going to say like a traitor unless they went to another company, but it's going to feel just kind of like a, like what happened there, unless it was, unless the reasons were very, I don't know, unless it was very, very well made known about like why you were leaving. I guess that's very much it's the biggest point when it comes to leaving. Like, you want to make sure you leave on good terms,
Right.
and that you're doing it the right way, so that there's not any ambiguity about, oh, I left because of, I felt mistreated, or
Right.
or I didn't like the people there. You want to make sure that I don't know. It's so complicated depending on how close you are and how tied in you are with the work culture there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word family is really interesting because, and that's that's a beautiful thing, and but then at the same time, is it like, okay, well, if they are your family, and you leave your family so you could make an extra $5,000 a year, right?
Sure.
Or for whatever, or because there's a more interesting job, or da 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 da. That's screwed up. Like, that's wrong, right? That would be wrong too.
What's wrong? Why is that wrong?
To literally leave your actual family, right? So if we're using the word family as an analogy, like, to leave your family to make some extra money would be a horrible thing. But so to what extent, right?
Right now, I'm like, Kanan, your workplace is not your family.
But right.
But I get it. You're making.
Yeah. I'm saying
I did introduce that word. So
yeah. So to what extent does that analogy hold up? Because it's like an awesome thing to say, hey, we're a family, and I've had work environments where I felt like that, and that's awesome. But I think if you take that family analogy too far, that's where you get to the point where it's like, hey, you're being disloyal to your family. Versus, like, is it a family? Is it a business relationship? Is it somewhere in between? Like, what is it?
Sure. I think it's tricky because I think at the end of the day, everyone understands. I'm not going to say everyone, but for the most part, people make it that they understand that work is work and my family life is my family life. But if I'm going to spend 8 hours somewhere, I want it to feel very homely. I want to feel like I'm comfortable here. And so you make it as much like a family as possible.
Right.
And so it does feel like a sense of loss. Again, depending on how ingrained you are in the culture, depending on how much they bring you into the family. Some places are not gonna. You're gonna just be another face in the crowd.
Right.
Just another number punching in the clock. But I guess I'm referring to some of the companies I've been at. Startup kind of environments. It's small enough where you're just hanging out together all the time. You're doing everything together all the time.
Right.
I imagine that a lot of if you're at an agency or some kind of place where you're just on a small type of team that's working together on a product, or building websites or whatever it is, you're just going to have a lot of those type of family type elements because you work so close day in and day out.
Totally. And a lot of the companies that I have in mind, the people that I know, and then I think of, are that smaller company, smaller team environment. And so that's exactly what I think about, where there is this close-knit feel, which is great. But I think it can just make it like, what's the balance? Like, are you a traitor if you want to leave to another job because it sounds more interesting or more challenging or money or whatever? Like, where's the boundary there,
Yeah, I mean, I think this question is actually very personal. Like, for some people, they don't feel like work is a priority on that list. Like, it's like, for another $5,000 or for another just like a cooler work environment, or this place has got beer on tap, I'm there. Just a few extra perks and you got them, and it's like no big deal. And all they're looking for, and that's not a bad thing. I think it depends on everybody. On the flip side, it might just be like, no, I mean, like, I'm with this place till the end. This is my life career place. And no matter what, I'm going to stick with them through thick and thin. They gave me a shot. I'm gonna make sure I pay pay them
like
back,
I owe
or,
them.
you know, like that kind of
yeah,
thing.
like
I
they
owe
gave
them,
me
exactly.
a shot, and I owe them, right? And it
Exactly.
like back in the day, that's so that's sort of how it was. Like you'd get a job, you'd stay there 30 years, they'd pay your retirement. Like it was this totally different thing from what it is today. And I think our perceptions and intuition around it are like somewhere in between those two things. Like we don't want to be totally mercenary about it, but we also know that it's not how it used to be, where you would stay somewhere so long.
Yeah.
I think just as a very practical thing, like, you know, there's kind of the high level discussion and then there's like the nuts and bolts. One thing that I look at is like, if somebody's stayed somewhere like 2 years, that's a good, like if somebody's hopping around every 6 months or year, like, I guess my point is that if you do want to feel free to go, you know, to move around if for whatever reason you want to. But if you're hopping around every 6 months, it looks bad. It just does. Like,
Sure.
I mean, as a full-time employee, if you're doing that as a contractor, that's cool. That's, you know, what the name of the game is. But there is just some built-in, like, just into the way people perceive things. You want to be somewhere probably 2 years or year and a half or whatever.
Now, are you talking about for the sake of your next employer, it looking good to them, or for the sake of like you just feel like that's the right thing to do when someone gives you a chance?
So like what I'm just thinking specifically right now is just literally the perception. If I look at someone's LinkedIn profile and they've, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know whether it's probably a good thing to stick around somewhere a certain period of time. I don't know exactly what that is. But it's something that's kind of a red flag if somebody's hopping around
Sure,
more
of course,
frequently
of
than
course.
that. You know,
Yeah,
so just
but-
as a really practical tip.
Totally, but I guess if you're talking about work relationships and just, you know, your perception with the people there, or in this case the people that you're leaving, you know, I think in the past I've always seen in my experience, when someone leaves, all of a sudden it became, well, I guess they just didn't buy into us, or I guess they just didn't feel the same way we felt about them, you know? And
Yeah.
there's like this kind of like they're the bad guy now.
Right,
When
exactly.
in the back of your mind, like, and I'd hear this, you know, when other of my coworkers would leave, and then I'd think in the back of my mind, like, well, I mean, does everyone feel like you just can't leave? Is it like that, like a cult mentality? You know, like
Exactly.
like you can't, like you have to. People have their reasons, and that has to be understood. And you know, you might do the same thing if you were in their situation. I remember I worked at a place right when I was just out of college, and I remember this guy had just left, kind of up and left for no reason, and I guess he just called in one day and said, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And so they had this running joke for like 2 weeks where everyone would call each other's lines, and then they just pick up and go, "Oh, is Harry there? Nope." Oh, sorry. I guess he left. And then I didn't find it funny. Like I was like, why are they making this guy such a bad guy? And you know, I didn't know the reasons why Harry left, but they did that, and then it almost made it like it was building in the culture. Like, oh no, none of us would leave here,
Don't
guys.
be a
right?
Harry.
Exactly.
Let's not be a Harry.
Exactly.
No, that's so
Exactly.
funny that you're describing that, because that's literally exactly what I imagined when this person I was talking to said that at their company there was this dynamic, and it was the same thing. When somebody leaves, they talk weird about them. There's this weird dynamic. And that's so funny you're saying that, because I think that probably a lot of people have a very similar kind of a story. So